Hello, thank you for listening to Hobo Armour's podcast at www.hoboarmour.com. On today's show, we're going to be talking to Adrian Blantford about the Ronnie rig and about the controversies involved with it, the benefits and the negatives.
How you doing, mate?
I'm good, Adi. How are you?
Not bad, thank you. Not bad.
Yeah, so do you want to tell us a little bit about your Ronnie rig?
Yeah, well, unless you've been under a stone for the last 6 months, everybody I think will be well aware of the new 2016-2017 rig. Goes by a few names, one being the Ronnie rig, the other being the Naughty rig, and then obviously the spinner rig, depending, I think, what part of the country you're in and what sort of angling clique that you're in. The rig itself, I think, has been around for a fair number of years, so it's nothing new, but hasn't obviously been out, shall we say, on the vast carping market until recently last year. Basically, the rig itself is an alternative to the 360 rig.
Got a lot of bad press though, the 360 rig, didn't it? So I think that's why it's...
Yeah, it did, and I think that was one of the reasons why somebody tried to come up with an alternative to it, because obviously it was pretty bad pressed for mouth damage. The mechanics of the rig were obviously awesome, but because of the amount of movement in that hook that was spinning, obviously through the swivel on the play, and there was no protection or anything like that from the swivel or the metal wear, I think somebody got down, thought about what they could do, and obviously came up with this rig itself.
Yeah, but even as with the Ronnie rig though, it gets quite a bit of bad press. I mean, we've as you've seen, we've started selling a Ronnie rig pack on the website with everything you need to tie the rig. And we did a bit of a how-to video on it, and we've had so many people comment on it. I mean, we've got one guy here that says, "Don't agree with that rig, mate. Far too much metal work around the mouth area for me, and that hook's just asking to come off just on the clip. No disrespect to the angler that came up with it. He might be a great angler, but it's totally shite and dangerous, in my opinion. Rant over."
I mean, as with everything, everybody's going to have their own opinion on it. And I mean, my opinion on it, the hook can't come off the clip, off the quick change swivel. It's as you'll know, Mark, it's very hard to get on there in the first place.
Yes. Well, we tend to open it up first. We have to, when I'm making mine, I have to open the quick change section up ever so slightly, not masses, but just with a pair of scissors or a knife or something, just prise it up just a little bit, just to try and ease that hook on. But that quick change section is designed to be pulled at that point anyway.
Well, it is that, yeah, because basically the quick change swivel was designed to quickly change hook links on and off. That's what it was designed to do. So if it's not going to pull a 25-pound or a 15-pound coated braid or fluorocarbon, then it's certainly not going to pull a metal hook off, or the metal hook isn't going to come off. Obviously, with the Ronnie rig, you have the shrink tube, which, again, depending on how you see the rig or how you want to construct it, there are many ways of doing it. Me personally, I like to take the shrink tube halfway down the actual swivel barrel itself.
Mm-hmm.
So that, and then shrink it down, obviously, really, really tight against it. You know, the reasons for that are that it will give you that flexibility, but it gives you, the Ronnie rig in principle gives you the movement of both the bait and of the hook, so that whatever angle the carp actually approaches that bait and starts mouthing at it, that hook will always spin.
Yeah.
And once it goes up into the mouth, it continues to spin. Me, myself, I prefer to use a micro swivel on the hook shank. Some people prefer to use the bait screw. Again, it's up to your personal, what you think about the rig and how the mechanics of the rig work. So it's a very personal thing, that.
No, don't get me wrong with regards to the bait screw and the micro ring swivel. When we were chatting, was it the other day about it? I've always used ring bait screws. I just have. I'm not very confident with floss. I think I'm more likely to lose the bait. I like a ring bait screw. It's easy, it's quick. When I'm out doing a bit of stalking, or what my sessions are usually pretty short and come few and far between. I want my rods in the water for as long as I can have them in the water. That's why I go for a ring bait screw. But your argument with the micro ring swivel that you had, with the extra movement, was, I think I might be converted and I may end up tweaking it slightly. So can you just refresh everyone, my memory? And
yeah, I just think from the micro ring swivel is that if the hook is obviously goes down onto the lake bed and say for instance that, you know, part of that swivel does get embedded on something or it does get stuck with the micro swivel, it spins the bait, which internally will spin the hook as well in my eyes. And also when that hook goes up into the mouth, it's still, you know, if you got a bait and put a bait screw on it and you twisted the bait, basically what would happen is it would get to a point, and then because it's on the shank of the hook, it would then start to move the hook as well. Whereas in my eyes, you're wanting that to come away and to always be movement until that hook holds somewhere. And it's just my preference. Like I say, everybody will have their own opinion on it. There's so many variations of the Ronnie rig out there now that it is a personal choice. I just feel in my own head that with the micro swivel, it's going to give me more chance of that hook going in somewhere that I want it to be. As I've already said to you before in our conversations, I've changed the hook link material now, the boom section.
I've always used the coated braid on my Ronnie rigs, always. I've always wanted it to fall out and kick away, whereas you don't, do you? You use an uncoated braid.
Yeah, well, I started off obviously using the fluorocarbon. Again, it depends on what setup you're doing. You know, an inline and say a helicopter style, which seems to be the vogue as well now, then you're obviously looking for a fluorocarbon boom section for that to work properly. Me, generally, I use lead clips. So what I've done is I've gone away from the coated braid, and now I'm just using a boom section braid itself. The reason for my thinking on that was a conversation I had with Ian Russell, and I was talking to him about his flick rigs and, you know, why he came up with that rig and why does he think it's so good at, you know, hooking potential, that sort of thing. And he actually got me thinking the reason why. What Ian said was, if you look at a coated braid or a fluorocarbon boom section, when that fish, that kicks away from the lead, and say you've got 8 inches of it flicked away from the lead, so it's lying straight, and then you've got your little Ronnie rig sticking up. Now, if that fish comes in, mouths the bait, gets hooked, when it's in the mouth, that if you get an 8-inch section, you've probably got about 3 inches of movement going up towards the carp's mouth before the carp feels resistance from the lead. So I was thinking, and what Ian said was, with his flick rig, as we all know, braided boom section, and obviously it's like a stiffed hinge rig, really, you know, with obviously the chod section going up about 1 inch, 2 inches. He wants that braid to crumple down into a heap by his lead, so that when the carp comes in from above or side and it mouths that bait into its mouth, he's got whatever the boom section is of braid, that's how much distance he's got before it feels resistance. So you've gone from having 3 inches before it feels resistance with your fluorocarbon and your soft coated braid to, with the braid section, you've gone to whatever length you have that section at before that carp feels resistance.
Yeah, because you've been getting deeper hook holds, haven't you? You were saying to me.
Yeah, I have. So basically, I've been getting it so that it's probably 2 inches in the back of the mouth. And sometimes even further, you know, and the further I can get that hook bait into the carp's mouth, the more chance I've got of it grabbing hold somewhere. Yeah. And the hook holds have been absolutely tremendous. And that is the way that I fish the Ronnie rig. Now, I'm not worried about the anti-tangle. I've never had one that tangles me. As long as you hit that clip when it's going out, it still kind of goes away, but as it's going down, as long as you've got that critically balanced, and that's the main point of it with any pop-up rig, I think, with the boom section, is a lot of people, what they do is they put too much putty on.
Yeah.
That is one of the main things that I see on lakes is people just dollop putty on, whereas I'm in the water's edge, and I'll put a big section on to begin with, because what I feel is with putty, it's easier to take away than it is to add. So I'll put a big dollop on, that I know that will go down very quickly. Then I'll bring it up and I'll start cutting it off little by little until eventually I get that hook bait to just flutter down by its own, by the weight, and it seems to be working for me.
Do you not worry about the Ronnie rig actually landing on the lead or very, very close to it?
Not really, because I don't really think carp worry about a lead. I fish over very silty patches. I tend not to fish over hard gravel patches. I feel as if silt patches are more kind of natural feeding areas for carp. So generally, I'll probably find that lead will probably go into the silt about an inch, something like that. Anyway, if it's obviously deep silt. Again, it's just the areas that I like to fish. I don't tend to follow. I don't look for gravel. I look for a nice feeling silt patch, not too deep. You can always smell the silt when it's coming back to see whether you're in rancid silt or anything like that. And that's the areas that I fish. So I'm not worried about that being near the lead whatsoever, because I don't think it spooks the carp, to be truthful with you.
Yeah, well, there's one thing I do like about the Ronnie rig, which I do think is going to change a lot of new anglers, or as everyone calls them, noddies.
Horrible phrase.
Oh, yeah, awful phrase. Learner drivers.
That's it. We all start somewhere, don't we?
That's it. Well, it was the same with the chod rig, though, and I can't think what I was listening to or what I was reading. They were talking about the chod rig, and they were saying that the chod's for nods and all this sorts of stuff. And at the same time, this guy was saying, well, yes and no, because if you use a chod effectively and you know what you're doing and you use it effectively, it's devastating. It's an absolute unbelievable rig to use. But at the same time, you've got to think, if you're just getting into carp fishing, like when I started fishing, we started off just using basic hair rigs, and then we moved on to the chod rig. I must have cast, because don't get me wrong, at the time I wasn't using a marker rod, I wasn't using a spod rod, I was just catapulting bait in and pub chucking it and hoping, usually under trees or to the back of an island. If there wasn't an island, I didn't want to fish it because I just wasn't confident enough to sort of map a swim out. So, but with the birth of the chod rig, it meant that I guarantee probably 80% of the time I was fishing when I first started, I wasn't even fishing because my rigs wouldn't have been landed right, it was messing about, I'd have been in weed, whereas with the chod rig, you could cast it at pretty much anything and it was positioned perfectly. So if you went fishing, as long as your chod rig was a half decent chod rig, you were fishing all the time. So even though if you think, what would the phrase be? If I had in a year, just say I had 20 sessions now in a year, I guarantee you 12 or 13 of them when I first started I would have blanked, and I would have blanked because my rig wasn't fishing. It was tangled up, or it was in weed, or whatever reason it wasn't positioned right. I'd have changed over to the chod rig, and then of my 20 sessions the year after, I'll have caught on 17 of them. And it wasn't because I'd got any better at fishing or I was finding a nicer spot. It's just my rig was positioned right, which is one thing I think with the Ronnie rig. Because of the fact that it's going onto a quick change ring swivel, you're either using a bait screw or a micro ring swivel. There's not much you can do wrong with it as a rig.
Yeah, it is. It's very easy to construct. Generally, what I do is I construct the hook part of it anyway. I'll do anywhere between 30 and 40 of them. And what I'll do is then that gives me enough when I go to a lake, and I can add whatever boom section I want to it, so to speak. And you're ready to go fishing within, 10 minutes once you found your spot. But also it allows you to lengthen if you are. I've fished the Ronnie rig in weed.
Yeah,
well, that's the thing. Lead.
I can see it, because if like you were saying with the getting it critically balanced, you could in theory get it to land on top of weed and it be positioned perfectly.
That's it, yeah. And as we know with weeds, your boom section is going to be the most important thing, because you're not wanting any kinks in it, so you obviously wouldn't use fluorocarbon. Yeah. Some soft coated braids like the one obviously we do. That's a really nice soft coated braid as well. You could get away with that, but you definitely get away with the braid because it just flutters down, and the way that it flutters down, it just lands. Like I said, the main thing with braid, I think people get a bit hesitant is the tangling properties of it. I'll still put like a little half a nugget on it, so to speak, It would never go out there just with nothing on it, unless I'm fishing over a clear silty area. But I think the Ronnie rig is. I mean, let's face it, Mark. Everybody's in the dog is using it now.
If I'm going to go to a lake in the dark and I'm going to get there late at night and I need to just chuck 2 rods out, I can't see a thing. It's going to be 2 Ronnie rigs because I know I'm fishing all night long. And then when the first light, I can come resort my rods out, get my bait out there, find a spot and fish accurately. But
Yeah,
I think it's just a fantastic rig. I can't fault it.
it is, and I mean the other thing what people do as well is there's 2 trains of thought into where you put the putty.
Yeah.
Now, depending on the situation, I mean, I speak to, because obviously I'm down at Fallows quite a bit. I speak to a lot to Brad Greening, Rob Burgess down there, and we're always talking about rigs, and because sometimes what I'll do is I'll put the putty round the shank of the hook, so round where the swivel is. Again, going back to the guys thinking, regarding this far too much, I'd like to go back to that. There's far too much metal work around the corpse now. There's a lot of metal work there, but every part of that metal work is protected.
Yeah.
It's either protected by shrink tube. So it's no different to the chod rig. Mm-hmm. It's no different to the stiff hinge rig, depending on how high you have your little, your little monofilament section. Some people fish with that with only an inch, so to speak, so it's quite a short one. So all the metal work is protected. The good thing about it is because it's got that silicone on it, because there is a slight bend in it, obviously when you straighten it, the flexibility of the shrink tube actually straightens out and goes with the carp.
Yeah.
So it is a particularly safe rig, but like I say, gone off track there a little bit. I just wanted to obviously clear that up regarding the metalwork thing. All the metalwork is protected, bar the bit that's important, which is obviously the hook. Now, like I say, a lot of people will change places that they put the putty. Some people will put it because obviously it's determined to either, you tie it with a loop onto the big O-ring, or as I do with braid, I'll do a 4-turn grinner. Sometimes I'll put it at the bottom of that O-ring. Sometimes I'll put it on the shank of the hook. But my preferred place for the putty is on the O-ring, or where, because, you can also critically balance it depending on your hook size. And obviously you can whittle down the pop-up as well. So no matter where you
depends
put
on the
that
buoyancy
putty,
of the pop-up, doesn't it, as well?
That's it, yeah. Which you can whittle down if needed be to still get that, that flutter going down and obviously slow sinking, so to speak.
Right.
But it's a rig I have the utmost confidence in, and at this point in time, it's my go-to rig. I've been using it probably for about a year now, probably a year and a half. And I know a lot of the guys, when obviously it was brought out on social media, were gutted that it came out, because it's a devastating rig. Yeah. I don't think there's a better rig out there for hooking mechanics at the minute.
Well, I've got a very close friend of mine. He knows quite a lot of people in the industry, and he was telling me about it, and he said, yeah, people have been using this rig for years.
Yeah.
And then obviously it came onto social media, and all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, who said this?
Well, it was. Everybody was devastated. They were going absolutely off the knot regarding it.
Yeah.
But another rig we'll talk about, which again, the same sort of mechanics have been used, but in a different way, is the German rig, which we'll talk about on another podcast.
Yeah.
Because certain aspects of it have been used on that. It's made that into a phenomenal rig as well now.
Yeah. Right. Well, thanks for coming on, and thanks for talking to us. It is really appreciated. And hopefully,
no problem.
Everyone's took something from that. If you can give us one tip for a Ronnie rig for guys who haven't used it, or guys who are a bit unsure, what would you, and you want to take one piece of information out of this, what would it be about the Ronnie rig?
Oh, God, there's so many. Firstly, try it.
Yeah.
Secondly, make sure that it's critically balanced, so that, very, very critically balanced, so it just hovers there. And thirdly, play around with your boom sections, but please don't overlook the braided boom section.
Right. Perfect. Well, thanks for coming on, Adrian, and we'll speak to you again shortly, mate.
Okay, no problem, Mark.
Cheers.
Take care.
All right.
It's now time for Tip of the Show.
Tip of the show. The tip of the show.
And today's top tip comes from Mr. Neil Golden.
Always use a hook. I really do recommend using one. They will dramatically increase your captures. One of my top tips at this time of year is actually related to zig fishing. Now, for those of you who aren't the biggest zig fan, it probably seems like something ridiculous to use at this time of year, but I've had really good success using 2-foot zigs. The fish don't move, a great deal at this time of year, as we all know. So to showing fish, or when you've got that inkling that you're in an area where the fish are, or even in a stalking scenario, a 2-foot zig does present a very successful system, if you like. But what I'm actually doing with the lead, depending on the lead system that you use, so some of the lead systems you get, rather than being smooth, they have a coating on them, a little bit like sandpaper. So the advantage of those coatings are that you can use the bottom of the lake to disguise the lead system, because whatever you put around that lead will actually stick to it. With that in mind, what I've started to do to enhance getting some bait around my zig, rather than spodding all over it and causing disruption to the water, is actually dipping the lead in a liquid, then dipping it into a mix that I make. So part of that mix is ground up pop-ups, bread, a certain citrus fizz mix that has recently come out, and form a paste around the lead. So if I'm stalking or fishing at close range, even at long distance with a short zig, I'm still getting a little bit of bait around my zig. So after a few minutes, the mix that you have around the lead will start popping and dissolving, but actually sends up food signatures through the water. Only a little bit, but because you're only fishing a 2-foot zig, the food is actually reaching the 2-foot level, therefore attracting fish to your zig, rather than casting and hoping that just a single piece of yellow foam, for example, produces a bite. This has worked amazingly for me over the last couple of months. Try it, and I really hope it finds you success.
Thank you for listening. Make sure you pay a visit to our social media sites, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat and Facebook, using the tag @Hobo Armour, and obviously check out our website www.hoboarmour.com.